If you watched my fishing story from Topana Lake, you probably remember that near the end of that session, a local guide told us that fishing was not allowed there. We still don't know if he meant the whole lake, or only that specific area where we were fishing. But one thing is clear, until we understand the situation with Topana Lake better, we are not going back there to fish. So we opened the map and found another large and beautiful lake that looked very similar. In theory, it should have had just as much fishing potential. The name of this lake is Liqeni I Fushë Krujës, and that is where we went for our next fishing trip. We left at 3 o'clock in the morning and first headed to one of the arms of the lake. In theory, this area should have been shallower than the dam, and there should have been more fish moving around and feeding there. We walked in the dark with the deeper sonar, trying to scout the area before setting up. But the bank turned out to be steep and high, with no obvious safe way down to the water. Only in one small corner, rain had washed out the soil in a way that allowed us to get down more or less safely. So that is exactly what we did. In the bay, there were many flooded trees and bushes. When we cast out the deeper, the picture on the screen was very interesting. There was a lot of fish. But in some areas, the entire bottom was covered with grass, branches, and underwater vegetation. The depth was around 5 to 6 meters, but some of the branches and plants were rising about 1.5 meters above the bottom. And above all this vegetation, huge schools of fish were swimming. Were they silver carp, bream, or some other species we still don't fully understand here? We couldn't say for sure. But one thing was clear. Fishing properly from the bottom with a flat feeder would be almost impossible there. So we moved closer to the dam. The picture there was similar, but a little better. There was still a lot of weed on the bottom, but not everywhere and not as thick. The deeper also showed fish, both small and bigger marks. We found our spots, clipped up the distance, marked the lines, and started feeding. It was still dark. Around us, the only sound was frogs. We kept feeding and recasting until sunrise, but there were no bites. From time to time, grass was hanging on the hook. Not thick, not too aggressive, but enough to create a problem. If the feeders were lying inside that grass, then, of course, the fish would have a hard time finding the bait properly. Then it started raining, and the funny thing is, this rain was not in any weather forecast. At first, it was light and not too cold, but slowly, it turned into a pretty strong shower. Luckily, it did not last too long. When the rain stopped and the sky cleared a little, I decided to fly the drone and look at the place from above. In the feeders, we had a mix of ground corn, whole corn, biscuit, corn flour, rye flakes, and 2 millionaire sweet corn pellets. We kept feeding. We kept recasting. But the result was still 0. With every hour, we started to doubt the situation more and more. Not the lake itself. No. This lake definitely has a lot of fish. But the bottom covered with grass, the lack of bites, and the constant uncertainty were not giving us much hope. By 7:43 in the morning, we were already sitting at another spot. This time, it was a small lake near a winery where there are big crucian carp, grass carp, and common carp. My friend started fishing with long casts toward the reeds on the opposite bank. I was fishing the closer edge in front of us. About 40 minutes after we started fishing, I had the first aggressive bite. A crucian carp was on the hook. Everything happened so quickly and unexpectedly that I didn't even manage to turn on the camera to film the fight. Three minutes after recasting, the bite alarm dropped back, I struck, and the second fish was on. Then, just 4 minutes after that crucian carp, my friend had a bite on the far rod. This time, it was clearly something bigger than a crucian. After about 3 minutes of fighting, a small grass carp of around 2 kilos went into the landing net. During the fight, my friend's grass carp swam right through the spots where I had been catching crucian carp. After that, my bites stopped completely. There was nothing for about 40 minutes. Then, from the same far spot, my friend hooked a second grass carp, but this one came off right near the bank. The lake where we were fishing is small and has a fairly regular shape. It is not a big, wild, ambitious water, but it is quiet, cozy, and it usually gives you a chance to catch something when bigger locations refuse to work. At 9:43, the third grass carp bite came. Again, it was the far spot near the reeds on the opposite bank. Apparently, my friend had found the route the fish were using to move around the lake and search for food. After that, his closer spot also produced a bite, a crucian carp. But this fish also did not want to end up in our keep net and came off near the bank. About 20 minutes later, my closer spot finally came back to life and gave me one more crucian carp. After that, we sat for around another hour without bites, and then we decided it was time to pack up. We had left for fishing at 2 in the morning. We were tired from changing locations, searching for fish, walking in the dark, dealing with rain, and constantly trying to understand where the fish were. This was our final result: 2 small grass carp that looked almost like brothers, and 3 crucian carp. The conclusion from this fishing trip is simple. There is a lot of fish in the freshwater lakes here, but you need to search, test different methods, try different tactics, experiment with ground bait, and understand the bottom. Sometimes the big, beautiful lake on the map gives you nothing, and sometimes a small backup lake saves the whole fishing day.